Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello guys, we are from group 8. There is Titania Roswandira, Hasna Fadhila Rasyidah, Aisyah Noor Suha, Alya Putri Nabila, and Rosa Nirmala Fauziah. We're gonna present about goals of language teaching. Here the outline. The hierarchy of language. Abram the Swan classifies language into 4 groups. The first is local or peripheral language. Number 2 is central language or the main language within each country. Number 3 is super central language. And number 4 is hypercentral language or English. The first topic will be presented by Hasna Fadhila Rasyidah. Hasna Fadhila Rasyidah, the time is yours.
Local or peripheral language. This language spoken within a limited geographical area, say one country or part of one country, called peripheral or local languages. People do not usually learn local languages as a second languages except for those who migrate into the relevant area. Example, Finnish hardly spoken outside Finland and part of Sweden, Welsh confined to walls apart from a pocket of speakers in Argentina, Kurdish is a native language in Iraq, Turkey, and Iran, and many more. Some local languages, however, span several countries, thanks to arbitrary modern borders between some countries. Historically, it was only in the 18th century that languages came to be seen as the crucial identifying aspect of a country. Number 2. Central languages or the main language within each country. Speakers of local languages other than the central language have to learn them to life. For example, Italian is the central language for Italy and so is used by the Italian who speak German, Ladino, Sardinian, Venetian, and other language. Number 3 is super central language. These languages are used for certain functions across several countries. The super-central languages are often taught as foreign languages in school in other countries, such as France, Germany, or Spanish. For example, French is an official language across a band of African countries, like Cameroon, Mali, Burkina Faso, and others. It is still a language of diplomacy and an official language of the Olympic Games, even it was hardly visible at London 2012.
The last of the hierarchy of language is hypercentral language. This is spoken almost any country for any purpose and is now taught in most countries of the world. English has a unique status. It has become a global lingua franca, not just for communicating with native speakers, but also predominantly for communication with non-native speakers for good or for ill. The next is groups of elderly users. The first is people who are part of multilingual communities. Second, people regaining their cultural heritage, then short-term visitors to another country. And the last is people using an elderly with partners, friends, or children. Okay, and the first is people who are part of multilingual communities. In many parts of the world, people now live in communities where several languages are spoken. People who live in multilingual societies and in sense who doesn't these days need a central language to interact not only with the people who speak it, but also from other linguistic backgrounds, whether local language or language of migrant. For example, Mandarin Chinese as a central language can enable speakers of the 7 Chinese language in China non-confusingly using dialects to communicate with each other in speech and in the common written language. For many people, the ability to use another language alongside their own is vital to their lives in their own home countries. Children who grow up speaking another language than the central language of their environment need to acquire it to function outside their parents' home. The second is people regaining their cultural heritage. Recent years have increasingly seen people travel around the world. Many of the younger generations feel they should make contact with their roots, particularly in terms of language. In England, the school is called community language. In the USA, heritage language. The point is to learn a language that is culturally identified with your heritage, even if neither your parents nor your ancestors actually spoke it. For example, the Mandarin school has been teaching children Mandarin Chinese on Saturdays for many years, emphasizing the importance of traditional and contemporary Chinese cultures, so that the pupils have a better understanding of the language and how and why it is used. And the next will be explained by my friend Rosa Nirmala Fauziah.
Short-term visitors to another country. Discussed in other direction, the visitors need to communicate with the locals, whether in their hotels or in their supermarkets, even if this involves rather little of a second language. The visitors need the language to serve their customers in the tourist, transport, and education industry. The second language needs to necessarily be the local language. 74% of tourism through English involves. Example, traditionally tourism has been assumed to be an important aspect of second language for adults, so the function of the second language varies from the minimal need of a paycheck holiday in Guadalajara in Cuba to the demands of a conference in English for a poll in Sarajevo. Not only interacting with other participants but delivering a paper in English. People using also with partners, friends, and or children. Because of increasing cross-cultural context, people often have friends or partners who speak another language. Johnny Depp and his former partners Vanessa Paradis spoke English and French respectively. Partners in such relationships are very confident about their ability to communicate to each other in the second language indeed to pass for native speaker. For example, relationship starting on the internet may be carried out through a common language without either person realizing till they actually meet that one of them can use the spoken language. Some parents speak another language with their children, say a home language for children who belong to a minority language group. Some parents use a language with their children that neither of them speaks as a native. For example, German in Australia, English in Malaysia, and the other. One common situation is a deaf children born from hearing parents who have to quickly master a sign language to provide for children's needs. People using an L2 language internationally for a specific function. Many jobs now requires the use of second language. Many other jobs are sports around the world. With business, one motorizing or call centers, L2 users probably used it more often than native speakers, which turned out to be worse on aviation English tests than L2 users. Community is anyone with the same special interest. A language is a membership badge or indeed a legal requirement. Sometimes this particular usage varies with variation with its own rules and vocabulary, such as the standard of maritime communication, phrases established internationally by the International Maritime Organization in 2001. Example: the most obvious is piloting aircraft, where air traffic control uses aviation English. Everywhere in the world, the worst ever disaster occur on the ground in In Tenerife, when a Dutch pilot announced in English, "We are now at takeoff," meaning he was about to take off, but the Spanish controller understood him to mean that he was waiting at the takeoff point at the end of the runway. Restaurants are often places where the staff use a language amongst themselves which is neither their own nor that of major community. Waiters in London use Spanish to each other. In Toronto, Italian is used behind the scenes in all types of restaurants, regardless of first language. Workers in Sydney computer firm use Japanese for talking to each other, whether or not they are Japanese. People using an L2 internationally for a with rank of function. Many L2 users employ a second language for similar with ringing purposes. They are not restricted to specialist function. Henry VIII used to write love letters to Catherine of Aragon in French. John Dryden composed poems in Latin and translated them into English. The Lennon and McCartney song musical codes switches between English and French. English has been called the hypercentral language since it may be used virtually anywhere for virtually any reason. At the moment, this global usage is often associated with the idea of English as a lingua franca or ELF. English as a global means of communication between native speakers of other language. ELF that has its own grammar and pronunciation distinct from native speaker English. Although users in general is often misleading since they are a large and varied group. There is a big difference between the means of, say, married couples, businessmen, footballers, pilots, ethnic minority children, and tourists. They aren't using the second language in the same way, nor have they probably learned in the same way. When reading athletic research, one has constantly to ask oneself which L2 user group.
The largest group of all is missing from this list: classroom language learners. These are people who are not so much using the second language in their life as learning how to use it. In other words, learning how to become part of one of the groups of language users. Language learning is compulsory. The compulsory nature of language learning is most obvious when it involves legal process, offices, and naturalism. A second group of compulsory language learners are those who are forced to study them as part of their students. In most countries, all children are required to learn another language, in particular English. Learning a second language has not immediate or long-term relevance different from any other school subject. In most European secondary schools outside Ireland and UK, over 90% of the children are taught English. The difference between foreign language learning and second language learning is what lies outside the classroom door, not what happens inside. Sometimes the child goals for acquiring the first language have been contrasted with those involved in learning second. In other type 2 language learning in the volunteer student attending evening classes, studying for a modern language degree or learning online. English university students were questioned about their reason for learning another language. Students' goal in studying another language. It's fun and not too difficult. Language are more stimulating than other subjects. There's always something new to learn. Language means that you can do basically any job that you want anywhere in the world. Language helps you to be more open-minded toward an other culture. Language learning makes traveling easier, more enjoyable, more enlightening. Some languages are beautiful. Learning another language shows that you are a hard worker. The rationale for much language teaching is not to help the student to get into one of the 6 user groups mentioned above.
the aim to take a part in a multilingual community. Any individual will have their own reason for learning another language. Language to learners are as diverse as any other group of human beings. One of my students was accused by an English newspaper of being a secret police torture back home. Needless to say, the course I had taught him did not actually cover police interrogation techniques.
That's all from our group presentation. I hope you understand with the material. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.